Have you ever wondered why, in a world overflowing with knowledge, it's often the loudest, the most reckless, and the least thoughtful who end up steering the ship? Look around you. The workplace, politics, even social media. It's rarely the wisest voices that rise. Instead, it's those willing to shout the loudest, bend the truth, and manipulate appearances who take control. And maybe, just maybe, you felt the crushing weight of that realization in your own life. That despite your intelligence, your honesty, your depth, the world seems to reward the exact opposite qualities. You see, there's a terrifying truth we often don't want to face. Being wise in a society ruled by fools can feel like a curse. Let's begin with a confession. You've probably kept quiet in meetings, afraid that your nuanced, careful thoughts would be drowned out by someone else's empty confidence. You've likely bitten your tongue when you saw the masses cheer for a leader you knew was corrupt, shallow, or incompetent. You may have even scrolled through social media, shaking your head at the stupidity that gets celebrated, while truth, subtlety, and integrity vanish into obscurity. And deep inside, a thought gnaws at you. Am I the fool for staying silent? Am I too smart to survive in a society that thrives on stupidity? This is not a new dilemma. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian who resisted Hitler's regime, once said that stupidity is more dangerous than malice. Because you can reason with an evil person, but you cannot reason with a fool. A fool becomes a tool of evil without even knowing it, spreading lies, repeating propaganda, and believing themselves virtuous all along. Think about that for a moment. Evil may be rare, but stupidity, when it gains power, can be unstoppable. History is filled with this irony. Plato, in the Republic, warned that democracy would eventually collapse into tyranny, not because of evil masterminds, but because people, seduced by easy words and false promises, would hand power to the wrong kind of leaders. Machiavelli, centuries later, wrote in The Prince that the ruler who lies convincingly, who manipulates appearances, and who pretends to be virtuous will always outcompete the honest man. It is not necessary for a prince to have all the good qualities, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. And Nietzsche, with brutal honesty, declared that society fears the truly independent thinker. For to think for yourself is to threaten the comforting illusions upon which the masses depend. But here's the paradox. If the world rewards deception, manipulation, and arrogance, then where does that leave you? The thinker, the seeker, the one who refuses to play the fool's game. Perhaps you've already felt it, the isolation, the loneliness of being the one who sees too clearly. It's like standing in a theater while everyone applauds a terrible performance and you're the only one who notices the stage is burning. The philosopher Schopenhauer once said that the wise have always said the same things, and the fools, who are the majority, have always done just the opposite. And yet, here you are, caught in between. Let me tell you a story. In ancient Athens, Socrates spent his life questioning assumptions. He asked uncomfortable questions like, what is justice? What is truth? What is the good life? And for this, he was accused of corrupting the youth.
They gave him poison, and he drank it. Think about that. One of the wisest men in history was executed not for being wrong, but for being too right, too threatening to the comfortable lies of his time. Does that sound familiar? Because in subtle ways, the same thing happens today. Speak too much truth, and you are silenced. Call out the lies, and you're mocked. Live with too much integrity, and you're branded as naive, idealistic, even weak. So maybe the question isn't why fools rule. Maybe the real question is, why do the wise let them? Bonhoeffer hinted at an answer. Stupidity is not an intellectual defect, but a moral one. People often choose stupidity because it is easier, safer, and more comfortable than facing reality. And in choosing comfort, they surrender their agency to those who exploit them. It is easier to scroll endlessly than to think deeply. It is easier to follow the crowd than to walk alone. It is easier to worship a leader than to take responsibility for oneself. And so the cycle continues. But here's the uncomfortable twist. If you are truly wise, you are not exempt from this dynamic. You too are tempted to withdraw, to retreat into silence, to protect yourself by disengaging. You tell yourself, "The world is stupid, let it burn." But by stepping aside, by abandoning the fight, don't you also allow the fools to rule unchecked? Nietzsche once warned, "The good must learn to become cruel when necessary. Otherwise, the world will be ruled by the cruel who pretend to be good." Think about that. Maybe wisdom alone is not enough. Maybe honesty without strategy is weakness. Maybe, as Machiavelli hinted, the wise must learn to play the game, not by becoming corrupt, but by refusing to be devoured by it. Now, let's turn the mirror toward you. Ask yourself, how many times have you censored your thoughts out of fear of rejection? How often have you seen lies dominate, yet convinced yourself it wasn't your fight? How often have you mistaken silence for wisdom, when in truth it was simply cowardice? These questions sting because they cut to the heart of your complicity. It is not only the fools who rule, it is also the wise who allow themselves to be ruled. History's greatest tragedies weren't caused solely by dictators. They were made possible because millions of ordinary, intelligent people looked the other way. And yet, all is not lost. You see, there is a hidden strength in wisdom, even in a foolish world. But it requires courage, the courage to stand apart, to risk being hated, to risk losing the comforts of conformity. Nietzsche called this the courage to be authentic, even if authenticity means rejection. Bonhoeffer lived this when he stood against the Nazi regime, knowing it would cost him his life. Socrates lived this when he drank the hemlock. And you, though your battles may not be so dramatic, are faced with the same choice. Will you trade your voice for comfort? Or will you dare to live and speak with integrity, knowing the world may not reward you? Here is the final haunting truth. The world will always have its fools. It will always elevate the loud, the arrogant, the deceitful. But your task is not to destroy them. Your task is to refuse to become one of them. When you choose silence in the face of lies, you join the fools. When you choose comfort over truth, you join the fools. When you pretend not to see, you join the fools. And so, the question returns to you, more piercing than ever.
Are you one of them? Maybe you feel powerless. Maybe you feel too small to make a difference. But remember, history's great revolutions often began not with armies, but with voices. A pen, a question, a refusal. It begins with you saying, "I will not be ruled by fools, and I will not be complicit in their rule." This doesn't mean shouting louder than them. It means speaking with depth when others are shallow. It means living with integrity when others live by appearances. It means holding to truth when lies are easier. That path is harder. It is lonelier. It may cost you, but it is the only path that allows you to remain fully alive. So the next time you find yourself surrounded by stupidity, remember this: you don't have to join it. You don't have to become complicit. And you don't have to be silent. The fools may rule for now, but if enough people like you dared to resist, quietly, courageously, authentically, the balance begins to shift. And perhaps in that resistance lies the only real hope humanity has ever had. So I ask you one last time: when history looks back at this age of deception, ignorance, and arrogance, will it say that you stood apart? Or will it say that you were one of them? The choice is yours.